Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Longhorns, your daily number one source for all things Texas athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jonathan Davis, the voice of University of Texas football and basketball. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Longhorns your first listen of the day. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Longhorns on YouTube for exclusive content and to put a face behind the voice of your favorite podcast. Make sure you like us, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. Anything less than that, I have to believe you're not listening hard enough. We have an amazing show for you today, our second edition of Fan Fridays. And I couldn't be happier than to have my boy, George Korkian, with me today. George, what's up? Tell Longhorn Nation what's poppin'.
John, what's up, man? Just excited for the conversation. Talk a little football, maybe some basketball.
Getting into everything UT athletics, and we've been wanting to do this for a while. So, without further ado, y'all know how we do. Let's get into it. So, George, my first question for you is: we came off a disappointing season last year. A lot of excitement going into spring ball, just a lot of excitement going into the season for Texas football. But there still are some question marks about this team if they look to compete in the Big 12 and for a Big 12 championship. So, my first question to you, George, is: what is the biggest question mark for you for the UT football program going into spring ball?
Man, I think it's simply put, man. I think we gotta get some more consistency here with the offensive line. I think in games where they were able to kind of get up front, get downhill, run the ball effectively. That's when we saw that first half against OU, first couple games of the season. Arkansas withstanding. The games where they were able to run the ball, whether it was Hudson Card or Casey Thompson playing quarterback, gave them some time. We saw a much different product on the field than when that wasn't the case. And so I think, giving Kyle Flood another offseason with these guys, obviously with the huge, 5-star recruits coming in on the offensive line, how many of those guys, play, start, do they contribute at all? And really, just like I said, man, getting some more consistency up front. I mean, you got a running back who can, turn a gap into a touchdown at any point in the game. And the fact that, he was getting hit behind the line, 5-6 yards behind the line of scrimmage is just unacceptable, man. You got to give the weapons that the offense has some space. So I think I got to go offensive line here, man, for sure. What about you?
Yeah, that's a great answer. And like you talked about the addition of Devin Campbell and Kelvin Banks, both 5-star offensive linemen, the 4 stars that are coming in. You have to. This offense is going to be centered around Bijan Robinson, and so you have to do what you can to make sure he's as explosive as possible. I'm looking on the defensive end. I think that Sark will get this offense right. I think he brought in some great transfers. I think Quinn Ewers will elevate the ceiling of this football team. But the defense, right, if they're going to compete and try to get to where they want to go, it's going to be on the defensive side that is going to have to be the biggest improvement. They were 100th ranked in the country last year. I liked what they did on the defensive line, bringing in 8 recruits. Then they brought in 5 defensive back commits, and then they got the transfer Ryan Watts from Ohio State. So linebacking core, they some bigger questions right there, but I think the defense is going to have to take a huge step and match what the offense is going to be able to do if they're going to be able to compete next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think both sides, like, it starts in the trenches. I know that's coach speak, but I mean, it really, like, offensive line, defensive line. We got to see some massive improvements there, I think, for us to have any semblance of what I would consider to be a successful season. I got faith in Kyle Flood, Sark. I think, a whole nother offseason. I think they'll be all right, but we got to see that early and often.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So who do you think then has the most to prove next year? Like, what player on the Texas football team has the most to prove to you?
And this is Quinn Ewers, not included here, obviously, because I think he's probably your obvious choice there.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you one for offense and one for defense. I'll be quick with both. I think offense, man, for me, Troy O'Meary, because I've heard nothing from anybody who follows the team closely, insiders, people who are at practice. This dude is apparently just an animal, unguardable, contested one-handed catches down the field, unfortunately, withstood that injury last season. But like I said, I mean, I think if he can get healthy, there's obviously some potential there because you hear nothing about nothing but positive remarks from everybody who follows the team. So I'm going to go Troy O'Meary on offense, and then defense, man, for me is Alfred Collins. Another guy, came in as a 5-star recruit. Apparently, is just an athletic freak of nature. And man, I don't think I heard his name, by the announcers more than 4 or 5 times last year. And I just feel like I don't know if it's a scheme fit with him, with Pete Kwiatkowski, or if it's an effort thing. I'm not really sure what it is, but in the same light as Troy O'Meary, man, it's just you hear like, man, he's just dominating practice, and then you get in the game and it's crickets. So I think both of those guys, man, if you can get big seasons out of both of them, that'll go a long way to helping the success of the team.
For sure, some really good insight there for the Longhorns fans. I would have to say if it's one player for me, I talked about how they're going to have to improve on the defensive end. I didn't came on the podcast and I didn't talk some big stuff. I said we're going to win the Big 12. We're going to make it to our first college football playoff potentially. And I think the biggest reason we'll be able to do that if the defense improves is DeMarvion Overshown. And so he was the safety that converted to linebacker, and he's really explosive. He made a lot of plays last year at times. He's still transitioning into the linebacker position, so sometimes the instincts can lack a little bit. He can overrun plays, things like that. But the talent is there. The explosiveness is there. The athleticism is there. And I've seen a lot of people saying that, right now he's probably a second, third round pick, depending on the season. He could move even up into the first round. So I talked about how I think the defensive line will be a lot better. I think the defensive backfield will be a lot better. But the linebacker spots is really where the question marks are. I think if DeMarvion Overshown takes that next step and becomes one of the best linebackers in the country, he's just a freak of nature as an athlete. If he takes that next step and becomes one of the best linebackers in the country, like I said, I think it's going to be a problem for all the teams in the Big 12, and it instantly puts Texas even higher than I think they will be if you have a playmaker like that at linebacker.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Love Agent Zero, man. And I do feel for him, with the defensive line, if they're not shedding blocks and you got a guard in your face and you're already undersized, coming from safety, and you got a 300-pound dude running full speed at you, I can understand why it'd be a little tough, but I definitely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So George, like I said, I've been on the podcast. I'm feeling it. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm hooking forever. I'm making all these bold predictions. I'm writing checks that Quinn Ewers and the Texas football team have to cash. So where do you think this team will stack up in the Big 12 and some of the best teams in the nation next year? Where do they stack up against those teams?
Well, I mean, I think if you kind of look at some of the things we've been talking about, in a perfect world, Quinn Ewers comes in, he's as good as advertised. The offensive line takes even just a slight step forward. You got Bijan Robinson. Hopefully we can get my man Keelan Robinson involved, because I just don't understand why someone that fast ain't getting the ball. Perfect world, that stuff happens. Shore up the defense a little bit. I mean, I think a Big 12 title is definitely attainable. I know people are sleeping on OU with the Lincoln Riley and taking players with them, recruiting some of OU's players to come with them to USC. But I mean, they're still going to be good, man. That team is loaded with talent. I still think it's going to be them at the top. But if things don't improve, man, I think unfortunately we'll see more of the same. Quinn Ewers can have a cannon for an arm, but if he's getting sacked, 5-6 times a game running for his life, Bijan's getting hit behind the line. Unfortunately, man, it pains me to say it, but I can't see a situation where we're winning, 8, 9, 10 games if our best players are, not able to contribute. So, I think if we just get a little improvement on the line of scrimmage, man, both sides, offense and defense, I think you'll see a lot more, Agent Zero, like you mentioned, out there being able to make some more plays. Get Bijan in space. I think Big 12 title is definitely, within grasp. Now I'm not going to compare us to the Bamas of the world just quite yet, but which we play them in week 2, so I guess we'll see. But I think Big 12, top of the Big 12 is definitely in reach, and as far as nationally goes, I think we can compete.
All right, so George, I have to, we're on the podcast. I have to hold your feet to the fire. Who wins the Big 12 next year?
Oh man. I just using recency bias, man. I gotta go. Oh man, yeah. We'll say Texas.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, but it's I got a decade behind me here, man, giving me some doubts, but I got faith in my man Sark, man. We'll get the ship right.
Hey, Andre 3000 says spaceships don't come equipped with rear view mirrors. Excuse me, they dip. So
That's true.
we can only look forward, and I think Texas wins the Big 12 next year as well. All right, so we've seen in the college basketball season the UT team has been up and down. They've had some really high highs, great wins against Iowa State and Kansas and Tennessee, but then we've seen the lows against Texas Tech and Baylor. And now we have the epic matchup tomorrow. We saw what happened when Chris Beard and the Texas basketball team, they went into Lubbock. It was a hostile environment. And now that same Texas Tech team comes to the 40 acres to play Texas at the Irwin Center. What do you think happens tomorrow, George?
Man, it's hard for me to predict a win here, man, because that Texas Tech team, they're full of dogs, man. That roster, and admittedly, I don't follow Texas Tech basketball, maybe as close as I should to have this conversation, but from when I've tuned in to their games, obviously the Texas game, I mean, that was a beatdown from the moment it tipped off. That's an older team, an experienced team. They play well together. They have a great coach. I'd like to say that with the home court advantage, we come away with the win. I think we really need a big game for Marcus Carr. I feel like the games with Marcus, it's either like, he's going for 30 assists or he's going for 30 points. We never get like a good balance of him trying to attack, also facilitate. But I think if we can, make our 3-pointers, force turnovers, we've seen the team has definitely been more successful when they've pressured opposing offenses, gotten some steals and then scored off of those steals. I think that's key, man. They're able to get some turnovers. I think they can definitely win. I think they need to win for their confidence. We got, I think, after that game, we'll have 4 games left, the regular season before conference tourneys and March comes fast. So, I think they really need to win this game for their psyche and just moving forward. So I'm going to take the Longhorns, man. I think backs up against the wall, senior team, man. I'm going to take them. I think the crowd's going to come ready. Probably going to use less obscenities than the Tech crowd did, but
Definitely.
I think they're going to come ready, come loud, and I think we're going to see some big performances from some of the older guys. We're going to come away with the win.
Okay, huge prediction here. I will not make a prediction. I embarrassed myself on the podcast last time. I said Texas would beat Texas Tech 61-57, and Texas Tech had me crying at the club. But what I will say is, George made some really good points. I said, on the podcast yesterday that Marcus Carr, he's going to have to come out aggressive the whole game. He can't come out and just look to pass the ball. He has to be that Minnesota Marcus Carr that averaged 19 points a game. Courtney Bishop is going to have to step up again, especially in the absence of Trey Mitchell. And Timmy Allen is going to have to be the best player on the floor, similar to the way that he was in the game against Kansas. And Andrew Jones is going to have to continue to be a microwave off the bench and make threes. Courtney Ramey, it's just going to have to be all hands on deck. The fans, the coaching staff, and the players if they want to get a win tomorrow in Austin against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. So coming up next, I'll talk to George about his UT fandom, right? How he became a fan, some of his favorite moments, most disappointing moments as a UT fan. But first, a word from our sponsors. Football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, George. So, lifetime Longhorns fan. Just tell us how you developed your love for UT athletics. Where did it start? How did you end up here? As the resident expert and lifetime Longhorns fan and being invested in everything University of Texas.
Man, honestly, like I got a lot of family in Texas. I'm not from Texas originally. Got a lot of family in Dallas, Fort Worth, and so the state of Texas, the Cowboys, like it's always kind of a thing. And I went and visited some family, and actually the first game I ever watched was that epic Rose Bowl win against Michigan, not USC. So I turned that game on, man, and it was I don't know what it was, man. It was a mix of Vince Young being awesome, Cedric Benson being awesome, the colors. It was a great game to watch. I remember watching start to finish with my dad. And I just kind of became a fan from that moment, man. Became like low key obsessed with the team. I've followed him ever since. I'll say this, man. It was a lot easier from that point until about, I don't know, 2009. And then things got a little rocky for us in Austin. We've had some highs since then, but for the most part, it's been a little difficult here and there. But I love the university, man. I hope one day to call myself an alum. I didn't go there out of high school, unfortunately, but hopefully one day maybe I can get a little master's degree or something, call myself an alum. But yeah, I mean, really, Vince Young, dude, turned that game on. Just seeing him out there winning that game single handedly, the colors, all of it, man. It was just cool.
For sure. And so outside of Vince Young, who is your all-time favorite UT athlete?
Oh man, that's tough. Let me think. I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go Jordan Shipley here, man.
Oh, like that.
He's up there. I love Brian Arakpo.
Like that too. I said him when I did my first Fan Friday.
Yeah,
Brian Orakpo for sure.
yeah. No, Arakpo, man. He was the man. Over the years, you've had a bunch, man. Unfortunately, here
Mhm.
recently, a lot of these guys have been really talented. I mean, Bijan might be up there on that list just watching him play, but yeah, no, I think I got to go Jordan Shipley, man. That dude was a lot of fun to watch. I think he's like top five in pretty much every record that Texas has for receiving. His brother was nasty too, so yeah, I'll go 8. I'll go Jordan Shipley.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's always going to be Kevin Durant. I don't know if that'll ever change, on the basketball side. But definitely, I probably identified more with that Colt McCoy, Jordan Shipley era than even, the Vince Young era. I kind of started watching really with the Rose Bowl. I wasn't a huge college football fan before that, but just seeing, my whole family rooting for Texas and the game against USC was just so electric. That's really when I got into it. So the Colt McCoy era was where I was invested and I talked on the podcast before about how when Michael Crabtree had that catch and he ran in the end zone, I was crying. Like, as a high school kid, I was standing on my couch crying. So that definitely was a tough moment for me. But speaking of tough moments, what has been the most disappointing moment for you in your UT fandom as a UT fan? What was the moment where you just couldn't take what you were seeing? Like what was that moment for you, George?
Man, I'm gonna go. Um, I'm probably gonna go the championship game against Bama. Colt McCoy. It seemed like we were really in that game. We had the momentum. I can't remember if it was the fake punt that they threw the pick to Earl, if that happened right before he got injured. I think it did, the drive right before. So, we were up, we were going into score, we had the momentum. I think we had the talent to beat that Bama team. I mean, you saw a freshman come in, Garrett Gilbert, and almost lead us back. So that would probably be up there. But man, I ain't gonna lie, I was on my honeymoon during this past Red River rivalry game. So I told my wife on the honeymoon, I said, look, you can plan the whole thing. You just give me a couple hours on Saturday. Let me watch the game. Go get a pedicure, whatever you want to do. Just let me watch the game. So I'm watching, having some drinks at the bar, having a good time, talking my stuff. There was a guy who went to OU there. And then, man, for them to collapse like that, you're on your honeymoon, so it's the time of your life. But man, I'm just sitting there. I'm like, man, I just can't escape this, man. I'm in the Caribbean. I'm still getting, smack talk by OU fans. But I live in Oklahoma, so it's like, it's here at home. I'm getting talked to. I go on my honeymoon. I'm getting talked to by OU fans. It's just never ending, man. That's got to be up there, man. It's got to be like number 2 for me. That was really, really rough to watch.
Man, I hate that, especially with you being on the honeymoon. I hope you was able to enjoy the rest of the day after that, but that would be tough. And like you said, just you all the way in the Caribbean, it's supposed to be on vacation and you're dealing with UT losing and the OU fans talking. I could only imagine how that was, bro.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the time of your life, man. It didn't ruin anything for me, but I can't lie and say that my day wasn't slightly hampered by that, at least for a little bit. Because yeah, you're just watching it like, oh my god, they're really about to lose this game. I gotta like act happy the rest of the day. But yeah, that's definitely up there for sure.
For sure. All right, so we'll go into the next segment on a good note. So, what has been your most happy moment as a UT fan? Like, what moment brought you the most joy since you've been watching UT athletics?
So we'll go the USC game aside because I'm sure anybody who was
Mhm.
old enough to see it, that'd probably be number one. Man, I'm gonna go. Speaking of Red River games, man, that 48-45 game. I was actually at the game. I was there with a bunch of friends, all of which were OU fans. It was a lot of fun, man. Like being there, going up big. Kyler Murray comes back late. Dick at the kicker makes that kick. With his famous his wink at the camera. That's probably up there number one, just because I was fortunate enough to I was there experiencing that atmosphere. Like if you haven't been, man, there's nothing like it. It's
Mhm.
loud, it's ruckus, everyone's drinking, having a good time, man. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'd probably say for me, man, that would have to be number one. Uh, just being there and experiencing that win.
Yeah, great moment for sure. I can't argue with that. A great game, and especially with you being there, like you said, those atmospheres, those college games, those UT games, Longhorn games are just electric. So I'm glad you were able to experience that, and I'm glad they even when you're on your honeymoon they lost, but I'm glad when you were in person you paid money for the game. They
Yeah,
got you a win. So
for
coming up next, I talked to George a little bit more about some of the other teams that he's invested in as we round out, the second edition of Fan Fridays. But another word from our sponsors first. Hungry? Try Built Bar, especially the puffs. If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Go get the puffs. They're the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors: yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. Mmm, so good. These are going to be your new favorite. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these: mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for February, white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all delicious and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, George. So speaking of teams that stress us out the most, besides the UT Longhorns, there's another team that's probably stressed you a little more even than the Longhorns. So I know you're a Cowboys fan. What happened this season, man?
Oh man, where to begin? We might have to end this podcast and start another one, man, to fit in our time constraint here. I wish I knew, man. I don't know. It's the same thing that's been happening for forever. It's like you look at the roster. It's like, wow, we stack up with everybody. You look at the players. They play well. They don't play well. The coaching staff. I mean, Mike McCarthy. Like at this point, I'm not really sure how to feel about him. I mean, I can't say that he's done a good job, but I can't say he's done a bad job either. I mean, you're talking about a team that was what 12-5, number one in the league in offense. Um, it's just for whatever reason, man. When the lights come on, this team just kind of like, where you at? So I think I think going into next year, man, we've got some building blocks for them, but it's man, you're talking about frustrating. Texas, at least they got the excuse of recycling players every 4 years. You got 18-year-old kids, playing roles. I don't really know, man. I think that list is probably much longer than we have time to talk about. But yeah, watching that Niners game in the playoffs just kind of makes you sad. It's not even mad. You're just like, come on, man. Like couldn't win one of them. Not one playoff game.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, you talked about it, like just being a a Cowboys fan, excuse me, my whole life. It always seems like in those biggest games, like when we're on TV or national TV games, and everybody's ready to talk about you. So you're hoping, like, don't embarrass me, don't embarrass me. And they just time and time again, they go out there and fold, man. I don't know what's going on. And then it's like when they do play well, like if you look at the Buccaneers game, the first game of the season, it's like always good, but not good enough, or they're always coming back at the end, or like you said, you just want more out of this team. You think you have the talent. They put up the stats. Number one in offense. The defense was crazy this year and have nothing to show for it. You literally have nothing to show for it. So
I mean,
it
you got
sucks.
the corner who leads the NFL in interceptions. You have who might be the best young defensive player in the league, and Micah Parsons. Big contributions from guys. Free agents who came in, Jaron Curse, to name one. I mean, it really just felt different. That first game, I actually, wasn't all that upset because I'm like, this is defending champion. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got the GOAT at quarterback, and for you to play that well and lose and on a, we'll call it questionable non-call on an obvious push off by Godwin there at the end. I mean, you're one play away from winning that game. So I'm watching that being like, okay, go on this big run. I'm thinking great, and then like it does every year, man, it found a way to kind of crumble there at the end and make you and I have to talk about how depressed we are instead of how happy we are, So
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like at this point, I don't even get excited about the off seasons. Maybe around the draft I'll get excited again, but coming into the season, it's just like they got to prove it to me. But I'll get you out of here. I got one more question for you. Is Dak Prescott the quarterback of the future for the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, I sure hope so because they're paying him a lot of money. But no, I mean, to be honest with you, man, I love Ford. He's probably my favorite NFL player. Do I put him in the same category as Mahomes, Rodgers, Josh Allen? No, I don't. I'm not going to, be naive and say that I think he's as good. But I mean, yeah, you can win with that guy. He's a competitor. He's a leader. That guy's been through more than I think any of us have in his lifetime. He's managed to stay grounded. So I can rock with that. And, I think, yeah, of course, I think he can get it done, man, but kind of need some help, from other people. And I'm pointing the finger here mostly at Kellen Moore. I think he did a really bad job down that stretch at the second half of the season when it was very obvious that teams had started to kind of catch on to what we were doing offensively. We didn't really see a lot of adjustments. In fact, we kind of regressed into a simpler, easier to read offense. And you just don't really see that from teams who compete for championships year in and year out. You got to be able to adapt. So I think Dak can do it. I don't think he can do it alone. I think you're really going to have to see some big steps by Kellen Moore here. I don't know why people were considering him for head coaching, vacancies. That made no sense to me. So he was the one I was the most disappointed in, man. Heralded as the golden boy. So yeah, I think Dak can do it. I definitely do. I mean, if Trent Dilfer, these other guys can win these big games, I think Dak Prescott can too. But he's going to need some help for sure. So.
Yeah, I agree on the Kellen Moore front. I talked about, how CeeDee Lamb really didn't get a lot of touches toward the end of the season, how Tony Pollard only has 6 touches in that game against the 49ers, where he's clearly our best running back now. So a lot of disappointing things from Kellen Moore. But one thing that was not disappointing was today's episode, the second edition of Fan Fridays. George, I'm so glad you were able to join me. Tell them where they can find you on socials.
Yeah, man. So Twitter's just @_ George Korkian. You see it there on the screen if you want to follow me. I will admit it's not all sports. There's some other stuff on there, but it's mostly sports. So if you want to give me a follow, I'll be, hopefully interacting with John here more a little bit, trying to, talk about stuff a little bit more with him and maybe trying to get in some Cowboy stuff as well. So yeah, man, I appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully we can do this again. And, as always, go Cowboys, hook 'em horns, and let's get a win in Austin, man. I really want to see us win that game, man. I think we can. So.
Yes, sir. And for my audio listeners, that's Korkian, George Korkian, Korkian. But thank you for making Locked On Longhorns your first listen of the day. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Longhorns on YouTube, And make sure you like us, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. Have a great weekend, Longhorn Nation. And like George said, let's get a win against Texas Tech tomorrow. Peace.